Hi everyone, it's Danny from Orchid Nature. Today we'll discuss about how to care for Brassavola orchids. Now these types of orchids are not as popular as Phalaenopsis or Callias or Dendrobiums just because they're not as easy to find in garden centers and grocery shops. But if you search in specialized online orchid stores especially, you'll definitely find them because they're pretty famous in the orchid lovers community. And indeed, they are one of my favorite orchids, and I'll tell you why. Brassavola orchids are species and they're kind of related to Callia orchids, so hybrids between them are very common. Most of the hybrids of Callias, fragrant Callias, are actually hybrids between Brassavolas and Callias or Brassavolas and Laelias. In any case, a crossing between these two is possible because they do share a lot of similarities as well in growth. But the major difference between them is that Brassavola orchids release a wonderful fragrance only during nighttime. This is why they're not very colorful. Brassavola orchids only have whitish, yellowish flowers, and they all smell at night to attract the moths that are active in the nighttime. This is a great evolutionary trick, because imagine the moth that is pollinizing these orchids is only pollinizing these orchids. So failed crossing between Brassavolas and other types of orchids are limited. So if you think about it, they're pretty smart. All Brassavolas are fragrant and release the scent during nighttime, but there is some variety between them, so you can choose which one you like best. This is the Brassavola nodosa, and I think it's the most popular one. As you can see, the leaves are pretty thick and pretty compact. They're not very tall. Also, the flowers of this orchid are pretty tiny, and overall it's a compact plant and space saver. Now this, on the other hand, is a Brassavola cucullata, and it has a much larger flower, and also the growing pattern is different. As you can see, the long leaves are really weird. They don't necessarily look like leaves, but maybe some needles. But I assure you they are leaves, and these sections are pseudobulbs, and the flowers are pendant-like, which I absolutely love. Caring for these orchids is actually pretty easy and very similar to care for a Callia orchid. As temperature goes, they like intermediate temperatures, but they can withstand high temperatures very well, just like Callias. And in the winter time, when my balcony was very cold, it reached I think 16 degrees Celsius, they actually did pretty well. I didn't see any bad effects of the low temperatures, so I can say they are very hardy regarding temperature. Now light is a major factor in their well-being and reblooming. Just like Callias, they do enjoy bright light and also direct sunshine, just as long as it's not too hot and it doesn't burn their leaves. The southern exposure is great, but an eastern one is just as well. As long as you can provide about 4 hours of sun per day, it should be just fine. The Brassavola nodosa will show you it's receiving quite enough light if the leaves are turning slightly reddish. It's not a reason for panicking, it just means it's enough light and you shouldn't go too far with the light further. The Brassavola cucullata, however, will not show you that red hint on the leaves, but as bright light as you can offer them without actually burning the leaves is just what they need. You should water a Brassavola orchid when the media is dry, so they actually like to dry out between waterings. Don't try to keep them always soggy or always moist. Again, just like Callia orchids, they can withstand drought pretty well, and they feel better when they dry out slightly between waterings. Don't let them dry for too long, don't exaggerate, but don't water them too often either. And so a mix made of coconut husk and bark chips, maybe just a little sphagnum moss if you have a very dry environment, will work great with them. Also very important is to provide extra aeration in the pot. Now some Brassavolas cannot be grown in a sort of a pot like this and actually do better in a basket because of their way of growing. And this is the case of the Brassavola cucullata here. And I have her in a sort of a basket, and unfortunately I should have placed more sphagnum moss in this basket because I do need to water it every day. This media does not retain any water, so I will have to repot it. But if you want to grow this orchid in a basket, it's best to put just a little bit more sphagnum moss, because in very warm temperatures it will go dry very fast and you'll have to water once a day. I fertilize these orchids regularly, but along with my other orchids, so they don't necessarily get any special treatment. I kind of alternate between a high nitrogen fertilizer, and a bloom booster. Now when I see that a pseudobulb is matured and it's ready to produce a flower spike, I will only use the bloom booster. And when the flower is done, I'll go back to using the high nitrogen fertilizer. I do have a video on fertilizers and what I think about them, so if you check the description of this video, you will find the link towards that video and you can learn more. The blooming season for these orchids are spring and summer, and they can produce up to 2 flowers per flower spike, let's call it like that, but it just depends on the care. If you have a very sick Brassavola orchid, it might produce smaller leaves and only 1 flower or no flower at all, but they are very hardy orchids, and none of these orchids actually had any viable roots when I got them. And right now, after 6 months, let's say, after I got them, they are producing roots like crazy. Also, the roots look like Camellia orchid roots, so they're actually very similar. So if you do come across a Brassavola which has no roots, don't give up on it, care for it, and it's gonna produce roots and new leaves and new pseudobulbs in no time. They are very hardy orchids, again, just like Camellia orchids. Now the fragrance of these orchids is wonderful, and I think it's one of the best fragrances in the whole orchid world. This is why I absolutely love them, and I intend to buy some more Brassavolas. But I have to warn you, it is just so intense that it might give you a headache if you try to keep your Brassavola in a small room, not ventilated room. It's a good thing they bloom in the summertime when it's really warm, because you can open the window, and this way you might avoid a headache. So I cannot describe the smell of this orchid. It is not sweet, it is not citrusy. I am not sure how jasmine smells like, but I've seen descriptions in which they say Brassavola smells like jasmine. I don't know, but it's a cool thing to discover for yourself. So if you want to have a special orchid in your collection, a species that is easy to care for, if you have a lot of sun, if you have warm temperatures, now this is the orchid for you. I promise you, you will not regret it. Even if you might not be a very big fan of the smell, the fact that this orchid smells only during the nighttime and it's so wonderful and super strong, it might be a conversation starter. It might be something to brag about to your friends. And when your orchid will become a big specimen, imagine you will have a full basket of white pendant flowers, like in the case of the cucullata, or just a small pot with a lovely array of small flowers. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I am definitely in love with this orchid and I intend to buy more, so I encourage you to at least try one. It's a very famous orchid in the orchid lovers community. So if you want to see more videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you have questions or suggestions, or if I just didn't mention something in this video and you would like to know, just pop a comment for me and I'll try to answer. And also visit orchidnature.com for more goodies. I'll see you next time, and thank you for joining. Bye!